Hello, DM Geezer Jim here. We are reading through the frickin' manual. We are getting near the end of Uncaged Faces of Sigil, one of my favorite one of my favorite source books, lore books for D&D, especially for Planescape. Up next is Zadara. Now, if you've been following our series, you've heard this name pop up a lot. Very well connected individual that's been described as a antagonist for some of our NPCs, a sponsor for other NPCs, an example and things. So this is her story. This is her entry. One of the movers and the shakers of the city, at least especially back in second edition's timeline. Not so much present in 5e, but you know what? You can certainly add her in yourself. Well, let's get to it. Let's read. Next up is Zadara. Harris Hatches may be known throughout Sigil for his larger-than-life business proposal, but there's another blood who can't help but to go about doing her things in a big way. The Titan Zadara. Unlike Harris, though, the wealthy and robust Zadara is rarely seen pounding the streets of the city. She sticks to her formidable razorvine-covered fieldstone castle in the ladies' ward, where she sets herself as a sponsor of other folks' ideas. Zadara's guards, a pair of fallen sword archons are high-level celestials, named Kubriel and Gog, stand at her massive wooden front door. Kubriel greets visitors by asking their business, then flies up through the only opening in the building other than the door, a small arched window. If the request catches Zadara's fancy, the heavy door swings open. If not, Kubriel returns to send the visitors away. Sometimes the archon reappears too quickly as if flung out of the window. Of course, an unwelcome Burke might find a different story if he comes back the next day. Zadara is reclusive, some say scared, though none know what could spook a Titan, and she only meets with folks when she feels like it. If she's already had a visitor or two that morning, she might not admit anyone else for the rest of the day, not even a cutter come to offer her a sure thing. As a jinx staker, Zadara is equally moody when it comes to backing a project. She goes with her feelings. Sure, she might be on the edge of her seat as a party makes a dramatic pitch for funds to undertake a dangerous mission, but she won't sponsor them unless her gut tells her they've got the skill, though a promise to cut her in for a fat share of the haul never hurts. Sometimes, even when Assad's sure he's made his case eloquently, Zadara often changes her mind on a whim, laughing and swallowing his signed contract whole. Zadara can do much worse than that, however. A story making the rounds in the ward says that 3 spice merchants who called on her were really polymorph pit fiends out to avenge some slight. Zadara fetched the jewel-studded Maul of the Titan she keeps mounted on a wall in her study and used it to decimate the Petizu before they knew what had hit them. It's bad enough that one mighty smash from the Maul can squash a Burke flat, but in Zadara's hand the hammer can shoot forth powerful bolts of burning lightning as well. Occasionally, regardless of the purpose, the Titan lends jink at a high interest rate to those she feels have a good chance of paying her back, one way or another. And Zadara also considers herself a patron of the arts, appraising and often buying rare or exotic pieces. When she takes interest in an unknown artist's work, it's less of a matter of aesthetics than a feeling that his stuff will greatly increase in value, especially if the Burke's about to get written in the Dead Book. Zadara's feelings are rarely wrong. See, like all Titans, she's got a unique power related to her personality and realm of influence. And Zadara's realm is potential. Just by studying a cutter, she can judge whether he might one day achieve something of significance and thus be in a position to aid her in some way. A drunken Barar passed out in the gutter might eventually come into great wealth, and a well-placed faction high up might soon fall from grace, never to be heard from again. Other folks in Sigil don't know of Zadara's skill at sizing them up. They just think she's canny at hitching her wagon to the right horse. But the Titan laughs off rumor-mongering. Jink is my birthright, she admits. But that's because I inherited my gold. Of course, I do know how to make it grow. Actually, Zadara's got a lot more jink than most folks suspect. Cagers see her as a flashy loner with a head for business, but the Titan's secretly a member of the Mercant sect. While she blithely and accurately appraises art and gems at her home, a sect ability, she's got many other deals at work in the cage, all aimed at building her wealth, property holdings, and influence. Any merchant worth his purse knows that money's the answer to everything, and that a body can pull in more coins with subtlety than he can with a club. Of course, Zadara's definition of subtlety ain't the same as everyone else's. Merchants usually keep to themselves, but Zadara often wigwags with Duke Rowan Darkwood, Factal of the Fated. See, Darkwood's got big plans to take over for Sigil, and Zadara'd like to get her large foot in that door. She'd gladly help Darkwood any way she can, figuring that he'll be happy to pay her back with a cut of every business in the cage when he's in charge. Even if the Factal's bid for power crumbles, he still owed the Titan for her aid, so how can she lose? Thus, posing as a wealthy seeker of knowledge, Zadara funds a number of cutters with projects that might prove useful to Darkwood's plans. First and foremost, she supports Lysandra the Gatekeeper's quest to lay bare the dark of the city's portals, swearing the woman to secrecy all the while. Why, says the Titan, it'd be immodest for me to take credit for your research simply because I paid for it. In a similar vein, Zadara also backs Yellum, a rogue Modron experimenting with the creation of spell haunts from fizzled spells. Zadara figures that the Modron might be able to whip up a spell haunt from a failed gate spell. The resulting creature might gain the power of the lady's portals, perhaps even power enough to enter or leave the cage at will. The Githyanki Jek Nalar also owes her work to Zadara's coffers. The Giths committed to mapping out the lady's mazes, looking only to sell her maps for profit. But the Titan hopes, and here's some picture of Zadara, the Titan hopes that along the way, Deject Nalar might discover some secret about the mazes that will help Darkwood should he ever get tossed in one himself. Of course, Zadara hasn't put all her bones in the same pit. She also funded Bloods whose work probably won't help Darkwood in any way, but brings her profit nonetheless. Like Zedeus, the Shator Geraleth, who's revising the Book of Keeping. Plenty of spellcasters on the prime material plane would pay dearly for the Dark of Calling and Binding Yugoloths. Or Koei, a rogue Asuras who Cabal of Celestial sells upper planar weapons to the Batizu and the Tanari. They fuel the blood wars so the fiends will kill each other off. Zadara loves the irony and deception. Everyone should have the right to make money for me, she says in her low voice, throwing her head back for a hearty laugh. But as Zadara gets to be known as a real force in Sigil with a lot of things going and jink flowing, it's no surprise that others think themselves her betters take notice. The ogre mage Estevan, for one, is anxious to get her to throw her weight in with his employer, the Planar Trade Consortium. At first, he sent Zadara rare gifts, skinned off the top of the caravans of cargo caravan, and asked that she visit him in his lavish office. Zadara knew of Estevan's reputation for never being seen on the streets of Sigil, so she specifically said he must come to her. The ogre mage then sent a bevy of flunkies, but Kubriel and Gog refused to admit them. So Estevan, appealing to the art lover in Zadara, sent her an ornate painted portrait of himself along with a contract. She was to pretend that the portrait was really the ogre mage and make a deal with it. Zadara sent back a note appraising the gift at a single copper piece. The Titan delights in toying with the merchant lord. Shemeshka the Marauder is another story. Zadara takes no joy in dealing with the self-styled king of the cross trade and Arcanoloth trying to wedge her snout into every game in the cage. As a merchant, Zadara is quite defensive of her financial territory, saying of Shemeshka, that wolf carves up pieces of Sigil if she owns the whole lamb. The Arcanoloth is vexed by her spy's inability to pin down all of Zadara's dealings. Not to mention the fact that the Titan is a rival female force in business, one whose mere physical presence dwarfs her own. A few Burks have made the mistake of speaking the hated name of Akeen in front of Shemeshka, but none dare mention Zadara, the Fiend's main up-and-coming challenger. Zadara places herself above the petty bickering of those like Estevan and Shemeshka. Above everyone, really. Fact is, before she came to Sigil, she'd set herself up on the prime material world of Rublia as an honest-to-goodness deity. The weak mortals of that magic-dry world worshipped a number of powers, but they'd never seen one up close and personal. So when Zadara strode down a mountainside and marched right into Rublia's largest city, the natives mistook her for a divine being. And the Titan was happy to use Advanced Illusion, Firestorm, Raise Dead, and the like to encourage them. The people of the city praised Zadara, worshipped her, and showered her in food and riches. After a while, though, a real deity of Rublia, a great power named Skiartum, took issue with losing followers to the so-called goddess. He chased her off-world, intent on putting her in the dead book, but Zadara fled to Sigil, the one place in all of the multiverse where she knew no power could follow. Glad for the refuge, Zadara nonetheless feels alone and isolated. She can't set foot out of Sigil ever again, at least not until Skierman's forgotten about her, which could be a long, long, long time. She can't return to her birthplace on Arborea. Her Mall of the Titans is now the only connection she has to her kind on Mount Olympus. Most of all, though, Zadara misses the godlike joy of toying with others as if they were puppets, and the material thrill of a god's treasure. She makes the most of her self-imposed exile by manipulating others in the cage. That's partly why she became a mercant. After all, her incredible size, strength, and abilities aren't all that special within Sigil. She needs another way to be a major player, and cash is the answer. However, as a mercant and a fugitive, Zadara tries to keep a low profile. She remains within the walls of her home, venturing out to attend the odd art exhibit, museum opening, and the like. And the cultural and sensory pleasures of the Civic Fest Hall are too great a lure to resist. Hidden by magic or darkness, she occasionally roams the wards, making sure she's getting her jinx worth out of the cutter she funds. At almost 25 foot in height, Zadara revels in her gigantic existence, and though logical and calculating, she enjoys displays of pronounced emotion and drama. She cloaks her dark brown skin in a gown of midnight blue, velvet spattered with small white stars, crystalline gems that sparkle as she moves. Her kinky ebony hair is cropped extremely close to her head, making her large blue eyes, diamond-pierced nose, and flashing white teeth shine all the more. Though few see them, Zadara wears sandals painted with gold. Their long ties wrap around her calves, and she can just feel the jink rubbing against her skin. For all of her power and wealth, Zadara must stay out of the limelight whenever possible, a difficult task given her bursting ego. She receives visitors, but she rarely calls on anyone herself. She's always on the lookout in case Skirtum ever finds a way into Sigil, or sends a proxy or an Aliax to do his dirty work. Zadara can only hope that with enough jink and influence, she might one day free herself from fear. Until that day, she can never leave Sigil. No wonder why they call it the Cage. And that's the end of our story about Zadara. Okay. Once again, she's been mentioned a lot. This was a pretty lengthy read. She's an important non-player character. Remember, when you're looking at Sigil from a financial point of view, you have three types of finance. You have commercial corporate finance, which is represented by Estevan and the Planar Trade Consortium. You have criminal wealth, which is represented by Shemeshka, the Marauder at the Fortune's Wheel. And then you have generational wealth, which is represented by Zadara. Now, one could argue that Zadara is the most wealthy of the three, as she has literally worlds worth of wealth that she took as she fled from pretending to be a goddess and came to Sigil. That's up to you as a DM to decide economically, but she is one of the big three, as it were. Now, I like using Zadara for my campaigns because she feels more accessible to the players. She doesn't necessarily have a single overriding plot thread or an overriding goal other than becoming wealthier and gaining more material value. And that really lines up with our player characters 9 times out of 10 anyway, right? So, Zadara is actually one of the more, if you do some time and some research into it, she's one of the more useful non-player characters to use as a sponsor for your characters when we get to Sigil. What I mean by sponsor, someone that's giving them missions, someone that's giving them a safe place to land, someone that's giving them information, a sponsor, a patron. Not like a warlock patron, but you know what I'm saying, right? The advantage of using Zadara is you can morph her drives, her goals to match what you need to for the adventure to do. If whatever your specific campaign idea is, Zadara is a little less connected to the politics, the plots, and the factions, so you can adjust her point of view and adjust her goals to line up with your campaign goals. So that way your players have a pretty potent and powerful ally, but yet someone strong enough to where they're not going to screw her over, which is also important when you're trying to put in a safe patron. Your chaos goblins go, oh, let's rob her. She's got all the money in the world, and go ahead and die. Another really cool thing about her story is the description that this is one of the few people that really embellishes the idea that Sigil is a cage. Here you have a titan, in some mythologies the creators of the gods themselves, with the innumerable wealth of worlds at her fingertips, who can't leave the cage, who can't leave Sigil, because there's real gods out there looking to kill her. So this basically becomes a gilded cage for her. She's living with all the wealth, all the trappings, and all the respect of the worlds, but she can't leave this one city. So that can lead to some frustration, but also leads to a lot of really cool adventure. adventure potentials. One thing I'd helped one of my other friends and DMs with back when the day was we actually used Zadara tied in with what's it called, Keys to the Golden Vault, to kind of run a good campaign out of it. You have Sigil positioned with portals and doors to everything in the multiverse. You have Zadara, a collector of art and artifacts and other relics who's motivated by personal greed first and foremost. And then you have the Keys to the Golden Vault, this entire 5th edition book dedicated to stealing and robbing and snagging and grabbing. It's a natural, completely natural connection, in my opinion. But this video went a little bit long, but Zadara is a big person and a big personality and an important character. So, sorry. So I think it was definitely worth it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Likes, follows, subscribes are appreciated. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. Feel free to join us over on my Twitch channel for live chats as well. Love to have you over there. It's all under DM Geezer Gem. But most of all, thank you for your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this project, and look forward to you joining me for more in the future. Take care.